This review covers the Vought F4U-1A Corsair. It's a 148 scale kit from Tamiya, number 61070, and it's meant for the intermediate skill level builder. Now, the Vought Corsair was a U.S. aircraft used in World War II and the Korean War. It was known for its speed, firepower, and ruggedness. It could carry bombs weighing up to 1,000 pounds, and had a maximum speed of 446 miles an hour and a range of over 1,000 miles. Even had a ceiling of 41,500 feet. Now, the Tamiya kit was first produced in 1996 and was reboxed as recently as 2005. There's 132 parts in the kit, and they're molded in gray, clear, and have poly caps, and also water slide decals. When you're done, it measures 8 3/4 inches long, 10 1/4 inches wide, and 4 inches high. This kit is a pretty nice kit for the money. It's well made. There's very little flash. This connecting sprue parts are not too heavy. The glass is nice and clear, and it's been just re-released over and over with different livery and markings. And we'll be using mostly liquid cements for this, as well as some CA glue and some white clear glue where required. Here are the decals that come in the kit, and they're very good. They're nice and colorful, and the register is very good as well. We'll be also, however, augmenting some of the gauge decals and cockpit decals with a product from Red Fox Studios. It's their 3D acrylic instrument panels, and they'll give a little more authenticity to the look of the cockpit area. Gather up the parts for the cockpit, and construction starts there. So clean up the edges of any light flash or any of the sprue attachment points that you find. You're instructed by the aftermarket gauge units there to remove the molded in details on the plastic parts for those panels, and so that they don't give any interference. Here's a little closer look at some of the sprues, and you can see some of the attachments are a little heavy, especially around the fuselage. So snip those off with care, a little away from the part, and then just use a sanding stick to pare those down to perfect shape. Assemble the cockpit and paint it along with any other parts that call for the interior color of zinc chromate green. I used an airbrush to paint them while they were still right on the sprue, because these are internal parts. And then I painted the cockpit parts that were called out in the instructions with some silver and semi-gloss black. Then I placed the seat belt decal in the seat and chipped the paint around the seat with a silver paint, and gave the green parts a wash with some brown panel line wash. Well, I have to say I really love the look and authenticity that the Red Fox Studio products bring to the cockpit here. It's a super fast way of adding some really nice looking detail to your model, and it is even more impressive when you can do this with the even smaller scales. So I would recommend that you use some gel type super glue to glue these panels into place, and that gives you a little working time to get them perfectly positioned. This review is brought to you in part by Ryder's Hobby Shops, where the fun begins. Stop in to one of Ryder's 2 convenient Michigan locations, where you'll find a full range of the latest hobby products, supplies, parts, tools, and paint. You'll find aisles and aisles of scale model kits, RC models, model rockets, Warhammer gaming, and railroading products. Stop in at Ryder's today and tell them Doug sent you. Gather up the parts for the engine and the cowl and remove any imperfections. Now, I painted the parts with some flat black, gray, and gunmetal and semi-gloss black, as you can see here in the close-up. And I gave the aluminum parts a wash with some black panel line wash and wiped off the excess with a cotton swab. It's easier to paint the parts before assembly in this case. I decided to use the open cowl flaps when assembling the engine, and then after I put it together I realized some of the parts will never be seen, but you'll know they're there. So you have an option here of either painting those parts that are hidden, or just foregoing that if you are okay with it. Clean up the parts for the wing root, and then open the vent in the lower wing root And there's also some ejector pin marks there in the wheelbase, but they shouldn't be visible when completed. I had previously painted the inside of the wheelbase with the zinc chromate green, and now I gave the wheelbase a brown wash with a little panel line accent. Locate and glue in the wheelbase pieces now, and the window brace too, and then glue the tops of the wing root into place. It's a good fit, and then glue the vents in the front of the wing. Next, we'll start working on the fuselage parts, so remove any imperfections, and then grab the cockpit that you'd pre-assembled, and be sure to nip off the antenna from in front of the cockpit on the fuselage. Glue the fuselage halves together, encasing the cockpit in between the halves, and it's a pretty good fit, but now glue the parts in the fuselage behind the cockpit. Now, like I said, the fit is pretty well established here from the dimensions, but now I used a clothespin to hold the very rear of the fuselage together while it dried. Clean up the horizontal stabilizers, and then gather up the engine, the wing root, and the fuselage, and give those a test fit before you glue them into position. The fit was excellent. I didn't need to trim or adjust anything for a good fit, so I glued the parts all together, and there won't even be need for a filler on any of the seams of this aircraft. It's a well-designed kit for its age. Before the glue finally sets, however, make sure that the horizontal stabilizers are in the right relational place to the wing. In other words, make sure that they're both parallel to the horizontal plane of the airframe. And this time, you could place a provided pilot into the cockpit. And they offer two pilots, and I opted for the pilot standing on the wing, which I'll show you later. Locate the landing gear pieces from the sprues, and be careful not to break the smaller parts. They're very fragile. Some really good sprue cutters will help, prevent breakage there. And I opted to leave parts B34 and B35 bay covers on the sprue so that they can be painted with the plane later. Clean up any imperfections, and then glue the main gear parts together and paint them flat aluminum. I glued the main wheel parts together and painted them separately with some rubber black and flat aluminum before placing them onto the main gear. Next, assemble the tail wheel gear and paint the gear with some flat aluminum and the tire rubber black. I gave the aluminum parts a coat of black panel line wash for accent, and then removed the excess with a cotton swab. The flaps are up next, and clip them off and clean up the parts after you remove them from the sprues. And then they get assembled and are given designations for later assembly, but I could see that all the flaps were different and identifiable from the instructions, so I decided not to mark them, but if you're not sure, go ahead and put a mark on them so that you know which flaps are which. So I glued the flag parts together. Then I filled the hole in number C flap using some putty as per the instructions. Now we're up to step 8 in the instructions, and they would have you glue in the landing gear, wheelbase covers, and flaps, but at this time I'm only going to glue the flaps on for ease of painting. So glue the proper flaps to the proper sides of the wing root, and then I went with the flaps in a down position. Remove the wings from the sprues and clean up the imperfections then, and glue the wings together around the wing root rib and check the fit to see if you need some clamps to make sure they are alignment. Mine didn't need any, so then grab the flaps for the wings. And next, you need to make sure that you have the proper flap and wing combinations, and then you can glue them together and then set them aside to dry. Now we're going to take the drop tank and the bomb, and we're going to glue those halves together to the appropriate other half, and then clean up the seam. Clean up the wing root to the wing attachment parts. So the parts offer, both wing up and wing down options. But I went with the wings down, so there wasn't really a need to paint the parts, as they won't be seen in there. After gluing the wings to the wing roots and the antenna behind the cockpit, I cut and trimmed some toothpicks to place in the landing gear attachment points, and this will help with some painting later on. And now it's time to do some painting. And I used cotton balls to fill the wheelbase, the engine cowl, and the cockpit, along with some masking tape to hold things in place. And using my airbrush, I then painted the underside white, along with the bomb, the drop tank, and the wheelbase covers. For the color coats, I mixed some sea blue with some flat blue to get a dark flat blue. And then I liked and painted the top of the model with my airbrush the color. So the delineation, the border between the paint colors, it's not a hard line. So you can freehand the lines with an airbrush. Next, use a medium blue for the underside wingtips and the sides of the fuselage. I used some masking tape there to protect some of the previous paintwork. Once your paint has dried, you can remove the cotton from the wheelbase and be sure that there's no strands of cotton that are stuck in the paint. And it's time now to glue in the landing gear and make sure that they're properly aligned. Look for symmetry from all directions. The fit for mine was quite positive, and I used some super glue to make sure that it had a good bond. Choose the decals of your choice from the options and cut them off of the sheet. And using plenty of warm water, release the decals from the backing and place them on the plane with some setting solution. The decals then are pretty thick here, and they needed several rounds of solvent to really conform to the features of the airplane. Now remove the wheelbase doors from the sprues and touch up the paint. While the wheelbase doors are drying, it's time to finish the prop. I painted the prop flat black and the tips flat yellow. The hub is a flat gray and the spinner is flat red. And I placed the decals on the prop, and after they had set, I sprayed the prop with a coat of clear flat to seal everything in place. Glue the bay doors on now with some super glue and make sure they look straight. Give the whole plane then a coat of flat clear to seal everything up and make sure your airframe is, something that you could pick up and hold occasionally. After the clear coat was thoroughly dried, I did some weathering. I used a brown and black panaline accent and some Tamiya Weathermasters oil stains, soot, mud, and rust. I also used some flat aluminum on a sponge to create a little light chipping. I was after a look of a plane just returning from a mission, a little dirty with no drop tank or bomb, and after the weathering, I had added the final cockpit pieces and the canopy that I had masked and painted with the fuselage. I left the canopy in the open position to show off the cockpit, and I used the clear part cement for the canopy to put it into position. Then I pressed the prop into the engine and placed the figure on the wing with some poster tack so that he could be repositioned as required. These are the parts that I had left over from the kit. You can see some of the decals there for other versions, as well as some of the parts for other versions. It's a very versatile kit, and you'll have extra pieces, so don't be upset if you see that you haven't used them all. Well, there you have it. Your model is complete, and this beautiful little model at an attractive price point just stands the test of time. It comes out with different liveries, but it's very well detailed for its size and price, and it even comes with 2 pilot figures. So where are you going to get that in today's kits at this price? I think it lends itself well to both beginners and people who want to add a little extra detail, like those gauge decals that we put in the cockpit. So if I were you, I'd find one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you like this step-by-step premium model kit review. And so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking on the icon on any of our reviews in the lower right-hand corner, or you can find us on Facebook or our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.